Today, we have Rebecca Horne as our guest artist, and I am so excited to have her here. You know, I wrote down some words that her work always brought to mind for me. And Rebecca's work, it felt domestic, it felt playful, it felt scientific, it felt analog, and it felt humorous, and it had a homemade do-it-yourself quality. But the biggest thing amidst all of that is it really felt like I was always witnessing a magic trick or something like that. Like something that suddenly, something was behaving in a way it shouldn't be, and we were all witnessing it. And that's got to be the most unusual way I've ever described something, but it was the only words I could come up with. And so I want to thank Rebecca Horne for joining us here today. Rebecca, it's all you.
Thank you, Timothy. I'm going to see if I can share my screen now. Okay, so yeah.
That's it.
I live in Brooklyn, but I'm from California. I first learned about photography from my grandfather, who was a Navy pilot, and he had converted a bathroom in his house into a dark room, and he also had Aperture magazines, which blew my mind when I was like a young kid and a teenager. And I guess he worked at the Stanford University medical pathology department. And when I graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute, I went to work there too. So
wow.
Working in the pathology department, seeing the specimen photography, the DNA sequencing, and the micrographs was really formative. And I work to this day in science. So it hasn't been throughout every single job that I've ever had, but I think it was formative for me artistically and obviously professionally.
Wow. You know, before we jump into the work that you're going to show, you've got a lot going on in your life and with this work right now. And you had told me today that you were at a lab today. Is that true?
Yep. So I'm printing a show that's going to be up for 3 months in France, starting in September, running through December. And it's a bit of an awkward time to be printing a show because when I started, everybody was in lockdown. None of the labs were open. And I found one that was still open because they managed to get themselves classified as essential. So yeah.
Wow. That's quite a process.
Yeah, it's been a little tricky, more complicated because of COVID, obviously.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, interesting. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I always like to hear what people did that day. You know what I mean? Especially if it was relevant to what they're working on. I'll let you take over.
Yeah, it was cool to see because a lot of these pictures, I never saw them printed. So it's kind of exciting to see that.
It does change.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to start with the work that I made when I got out of grad school. I did a lot of work obviously before then, but I mean, I think the work I did when I was an undergrad at the Art Institute was really terrible. And I think the work that, you know, I feel like it doesn't, your life as an artist doesn't really start, in my opinion, until you're out of school. And you have like really shown and tested your mettle and shown that you're going to still make art, you're going to make your own community, you're going to do all of that. So this work I did when I was out of school, and I was really interested in the idea of really stylized elements of landscape. So you know how in a drawing you'll see stripes for rain? Well, this was like my attempt to kind of recreate that effect using talc, which is a very tricky material to photograph. And this was one that I did with paper, again, playing with this landscape idea.
Wow.
So this is more, so I still work with paper today, but I got really bored doing this work really quickly. So I think I just kind of decided like, this is not for me. It's too abstract. There's not enough people energy in this. I don't like it. So I moved on. I made some good pictures, but I don't know. I got bored. At that time I was like,
Oh, what were you doing in your life at this time?
So I was working in I was working at a photo agency. I had started working, doing photo research for big publications like Time, Newsweek, US News and World Report. I eventually went and worked at Newsweek and became a photo editor, but I had a lot of agency experience by the time I did that. And so I would look through slides and, you know, we would send actual prints and slides to the photo editors by messenger.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I used to do things back in the day. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure. So you were in New York.
Yeah, I was in New York, and a lot of these pictures I made in my kitchen, you know, and then I managed to buy a house in Brooklyn, and then I started shooting like everywhere in the house all the time because I was, you know, it was my space and I could use it the way I wanted to. And this is one of those pictures from that time. And I like to show it not because the picture's a little funky, but this file, but it shows you that this idea of abstraction I carried into this work, and I was inserting pieces of abstraction into these settings that were otherwise, totally realistic and representational. So I replaced the water with paper.
Oh, wow.
So there's blue paper where there was water. And so this is obviously something that I'm still interested in now as an artist. And
That's beautiful.
It was fun to like be able to, sort of pour India ink into my bathtub if I wanted to. It's nice to be able to have the ability to do that.
Wow.
So this one, I set the table and I, put the food out, put a meal out, and then I put the tablecloth over the top and I poured the coffee through it. I think is another idea that I'm really fascinated with this kind of like membrane sort of thing, and it created this kind of improvisational landscape volcano.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, I had a nice light in this apartment.
So at the time you were making these images that do still seem to be connected to what your current work is like, who were you inspired by?
Oh God, at this, I'm not sure who I was thinking about at the time. I was, like I always am, looking at a lot of paintings and sculpture and other stuff. And there are a lot of sculptors I'm really influenced by, people like Eva Hesse. And so I don't just look at photography. There was a lot of other stuff that I looked at. I found often that their photography wasn't interesting to me and wasn't rich enough for me, for the interest that I had.
Yeah.
So this was just replacing the drain with the salt pile, which is something so again, this kind of like making little disruptions in the space, kind of little disruptions in the visual language. I think that some people have accused me of being too subtle, and maybe that's true. But I sort of liked that this was kind of on the edge of recognizable, sort of just, you have to kind of pay attention to see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, and I also always been really fascinated with multiple exposures, and these were analog. So back in the day when I was doing these multiple exposures, there really was an element of magic in these because I just didn't know what I would get. And I got really good at knowing how to place myself and then place other things in this picture space. So I'd be acting something out and I sort of knew more or less how it would play, where to place things, but then I would also be surprised. Now shooting with digital, I don't have that same kind of like real surprises, like what the, now it's pretty much like that picture, this picture together, but I still do it. But this is to show you how long I've been fascinated with the moon. This one was done in 2002. So I have been doing this, like obsessed with the idea of the moon, recreating it visually for a long time. This I did with a flashlight, sort of aiming it down at some salt. So I think in the wintertime, it's hard to shoot with natural light. So I often, in the past, I have used a flashlight quite a bit.
It seems like, this is fascinating. It seems like there's tools that reappear in your work, not just visual things, but like salt. Why are you using, like, what is the significance of these things?
Well, I mean, I think like salt and sugar are fascinating because they reflect light, and they're particles also because they're found in the human body. And it relates to consumption and, sweat and, pleasure, all of these things, there's a relationship. So this one also is like something,
that's interesting.
An idea that I like. This picture almost looks like something I could have done just like last week, because I'm still really interested in this idea of collapsing space, the cosmic space, and more, objects that are meant for domestic application. This is a really, really crappy scan of a Polaroid, just to show you again, this is like some of these ideas I worked on again and again and again. And like this picture appears in a much more refined way in the book, but just to show you, I've been working on some of these ideas for a really long time, and they either come back or they don't. And same with this one. This was like another really low quality scan. Sorry about that. So at this point, the work sort of changed a little bit. I was really struggling, I think, with being a single parent, being a single mom, working full time, managing my career. raising my son, and also with having romantic partners. It was like, I just felt like I didn't know, it was tough. And I did have this, like, I know it's almost a cliche in female photography where everyone's like, oh, the roles I'm playing. Well, that was a real thing. And it was hard, you know, to figure out what was what. So this was just sort of, this work kind of comes out of that vein where there's a lot of thinking about sex and love and, you know, failed connections and communication. Occasionally I let myself take a picture that's just really beautiful and it doesn't really have any other reason for being. I don't do it very often, but this is one of
Yeah. That's funny. Oh, it seems to hint at something darker there. That
Right, well,
melange.
the milk is something I photographed a lot. Like I almost thought of myself for a while as like I was kind of like a journalist of milk. Like I was like, oh, what's it gonna do today? Like I just was really interested in milk because as a substance, right? It photographs so beautifully. It's just, you know, it's sexy, kind of creepy, kind of sexy, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, so I thought also about the mother connection, obviously. So this was another fluid that I used a lot, and I photographed milk like so obsessively. I mean, I'm only showing you a little bit.
It's an amazing photo. Hey, you know, I have a question.
Yeah.
At this time, were you showing the work to anyone or were you just making work?
Oh, that's a good question. Right. No, I was not showing it to anyone. And in fact, when I left my kid's dad, I was really struggling with just, you know, trying to find community, feeling really alone, and like it was a tough time. And what I did do was I started a blog for myself, and I kept a personal blog. So like once a week, and I think I kind of connected with Timothy early on around this. He was part of my blogging community, and it was really important. And he's also a single parent, so I think he knows what that was about. And for me, I really built a lot of community that way. Just blogging once a week about the work I was doing, and I would post a picture. I have stopped doing that though, because it did kind of replace for me the work that I needed to be doing of like actually taking it out into the world. Like just making a blog post is not enough. Like it's, you know, so, but it kept me going.
Yeah, I mean, did you use the blog as a way to have a deadline, or do you think that you would have just made the work anyhow? You know
I
what I
wouldn't make it work anyhow. I mean, the blog was just like it was just like a fun way to kind of think about what I've been doing, and to, you know, kind of the idea that somebody else might see it was nice. I mean, you know, in the end, it was really kind of disappointing, I think, because a lot of the people that were reading my blog were photographers who wanted to work with me, and not like other artists that were also interested in what I was interested in. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. You are someone who I think is notable for the fact that you always had a career that I think people in photography would consider desirable and something that you'd want. And then you also were almost equally as serious, or so it seemed to me, if not more serious, with making your own work. Was this a conscious decision, or was it like, I mean, then even when you moved to California, suddenly you're teaching at the great art school and stuff like that. Like, how did you pull off these things? Was it fake it till you make it, or what was the deal?
Well, I mean, I'm good at my job. I mean, I don't know what to, I mean, I'm good at what I do. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. I like having a job and making work. Like, I don't know if I could really be an artist 7 days a week. Like for me, it might, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully someday I get to try, but you know, having the job is creative, and I like collaborating with other artists, and I have actually made a lot of really unusual choices in my career that actually didn't really help me any, but in the end I kind of did okay. Like I would suddenly decide, I don't want to do this full time anymore. I want to work 4 days a week, and I want to have more time for my work. And in some cases I was able to kind of make that happen, but because of those choices, I sometimes, you know, I lost out on opportunities, other things. But you know, I mean, I did keep making the work. So
always, yeah.
I did
no,
keep
always.
making. Yeah. So this was a picture of another photographer, actually. Some of you may know her work, Carolyn Drake. She's a really good friend of mine, and she has modeled for me on many things. And this was a photo of her from back, I don't know, so it's a while ago. And I guess the idea is that the woman has completely disappeared, and the only thing that's left are like the bonds. But it was also kind of a sexy picture. I don't know exactly what was going on.
Yeah, I think Carolyn's out here now. I think she lives out here.
Yeah. So this was another one from this kind of group of images that I've sort of been working on over many years, which is like objects, things inside other things. And it's, again, I think it's this kind of like impulse of trying to find something like what's inside. And also there's a tactile quality to it. I think that, and this is another theme that I'm always coming back to, which is just futility, like failure. Futility, sad, funny, failure. And then this was a kind of a creepy picture that I did of trying to shape my own hand. So it also would do these things where like I would do a multiple exposure and then I would try to figure out how to like do this gesture. Like you can't actually shape your own hand. It doesn't work. There's no way to do it. But it was just kind of like trying to connect like a failed.
Wow.
So this was another friend of mine who's also an artist. I think the only people that were willing to do these things for me were artists. This was actually harder to do than it looks like. The honey had to be like heated up and stuff in order to flow. So so like a lot of these pictures are really crappy because they, in some cases, I had trouble finding the original files, but they're kind of a mess. But this is the picture of a friend of mine. I did a lot of levitating pictures. So I was like trying to levitate literally. So I would like I had this like 12-foot piece of black fabric. I would lay it over part of the house, levitate her on that, and then I would run the camera up to another space and photograph it. And then kind of, it was a crazy process. It never really quite worked, but I kind of like that. Of course, the levitations never really worked. Big surprise. This is a group of images I did of myself where I was trying to feed myself or quench my thirst, like feed myself water. I think this work, there was a lot of kind of pain, I think, in this work. Like, I think there was a lot of, just, you know, stuff that I was dealing with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of them look like they have a big idea behind them, and then some of them look like you're simply trying to like look at a phenomenon. Like, oh, look at the milk arc out of that bottle like that. Like, is it both, or are they all extremely well thought out?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, some things happen on accident, but like, no, I would draw pictures of what I was trying to do. But often I would find that on the way there that something more interesting would happen, and sometimes I would abandon the idea. So, I mean, as I guess a combination of things. This was this wine pouring picture, which actually the gallery wants to show. This picture is really old. I didn't even know if I had it as a negative. I had to look through like 20 years of things to find this picture. But anyways, they liked it. I feel like there's some energy and some lessons in this work for me. I don't know what to think about, but this is another one. Is kind of this idea of like self-love, or this like kind of weird kinky like leather hug thing.
Yeah.
So again, is kind of consumption or being consumed and not really knowing which is which, and then.
So when you were making these pictures, was it the idea of just getting a single image that was powerful, or were you trying to build something, you know, like a narrative that would be woven together, or, you know, like, was it about the shot?
I mean, I never really had I'm not very good at like thinking about my work in a meta way, like figuring out how to organize it or how to put it together. And I really struggled a lot. I think in grad school, like everyone was like, well, you have to do a series, or you do a triptych, or you do a diptych. And I think I was just like, no, it doesn't work. Like, I can't make that happen. And I do actually have a diptych in here. I mean, one, but like, it doesn't work for me. And I sort of started realizing, no, I'm not working in a series. I'm making a body of work. Like, you figure it out. I don't know. I mean, I can't really, I mean, now that I have more time, maybe I'll be able to like really answer those questions. And the next time like a curator or somebody asks me that, I'll have a better answer. But no, I really hate the idea of series photography. So I know, but I realize what I'm actually doing is I'm building collections. That's what my work is. I finally, putting together the Pseudologia project helped me understand that I have been working in collections of work. So it's like a big body of work with collections inside of it. It's not like a series of triptychs or diptychs or a series.
Right.
It's a body of work.
That makes sense. Let me pause here and address the students. So students, there's lots of neat stuff here. And what I would encourage you again is, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and then I'll find a way to then pause, and then we'll, present them to Rebecca. So feel free to chime in as pictures come up that you might have a question on, and then we will address these things, okay? All right.
Sorry, if I'm blabbing too much, let me know. I'm a little nervous, and so I'm talking a lot. So if anybody has any questions or anything, please feel free to just shout it out.
Yeah, I think you're doing great. The work's super.
Thanks. So this was like this rope charmer image. I think the idea was that I think, again, this is coming from the same place as that other work. So here's the diptych. So this is the woman disappearing into the blacks. She's completely gone except for the objects that define her.
These two images were done together, or were presented together? Or...
Yeah. So, yeah, this was another artist friend of mine, the same woman who did the honey modeling for me. So at this point, I think I decided I had enough of working at the Wall Street Journal, which was kind of a great job in a lot of ways, but it was kind of a cold place to work. And people didn't really, it wasn't a friendly place to work, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. But I kind of wanted to do something different. My grandfather was getting older. I wanted to go back to California. I wanted my son to spend time with my grandfather. I moved back to California. It was a big shift. And I think once I got there, this is some of the work I made when I was there. I wasn't able to make as much work. It was just, there was a lot. I had even less support than I had before. But I did shoot some pictures, and I had a couple of artist friends, and this was Jonna Arnold, who modeled for me quite a bit when I was there.
So you did these in Berkeley?
Yeah, I did these in Berkeley, yeah. So I think that, the gesture of removing or putting on was fascinating, and I was trying to kind of do it in this layered way. And so then I moved back to New York City, and I thought I'd throw a GIF in there, because I did start using the digital camera shortly thereafter coming back to New York City. I was recruited to come back to work in an advertising agency to launch a video department. Oh, so I was really excited because digital photography really sped things up for me, and I have never been a fetish process person. Like, I mean, I like film like everyone, but I'm definitely not a fetishistic person about process. I don't care how it gets done as long as it gets done. So this just really made everything so much faster.
Oh, wow. That's right. You worked at Addison Design.
Yeah. So different feeling for these multiple exposures, like a lot crisper, not as messy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this is the moon again. This is the moon washing picture.
So a couple questions that came in here. Someone says, Stanley Phillips, a student in the class, says, once you finish a project, what is your next step? So and I guess it would probably mean, like, when you finish an idea of one of these photos, what would be the thing that would happen after, like, you got it or you shot it?
Well, I mean, I think for the past like 10, 15 years, my answer would be, I would just make it and move on to the next thing. Just keep on shooting, man. I would just keep on doing work. I was just doing that. And so I will continue to just do that. But then now that my kid's a little older, now I'm also sort of, trying to organize the work, like in ways that we just discussed, and trying to share it with people. I went to the Arles Photo Festival last summer, and that was where I landed the gallery, and I got a lot of feedback on the book. And so that was the first like photo review that I've been to as an artist rather than as a reviewer. So it was like really a big deal, and it was a big expense to get over there and stay there and all that. But I think it was worth it, and it was really exciting. I saw a lot of incredible photography while I was there. Yeah,
those things are great. And usually it's your contemporaries that you meet, which are the things that stick with you at those things, I think.
Totally. It was exciting. I got to do so much cool work.
So now that your son is older, do you feel that's what allowed you to, because suddenly you have a book, you have a show in another country, there's a lot going on suddenly. Do you parallel it to that the demands of parenting are less?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like he's 14 now. He's not a little kid anymore. He still needs my attention, but not like before. And it's amazing. You know, I just feel like it's a different world for me. So
Yeah. Here's a question that came in. Rochelle Steele says, I occasionally assist a master photographer that works in still life. He often leaves a setup for days as he dives deeper and deeper into his work. Do you also work on the same set for a while as the work unfolds and the images take the deeper meaning you're going for?
sometimes I do leave a setup, but often it doesn't sometimes, only sometimes, rarely is it actually productive for me to leave a set up that I get back into the same place, because a lot of times I'm really switching ideas. Like I have a lot of things on the burner at once, and like right now I'm really obsessed with the idea of orbit, but I'm also really interested in collages that I've kind of started doing a little bit. I have all these different ideas I'm working on, so when I go back to the studio I just don't know where I'm going to land, and I want to be flexible about that. So I have done it, and I have the luxury I can do it now because I actually have a separate studio space, and, which is pretty exciting.
That is exciting. So in the past, though, you were always just shooting at home, correct?
Yeah, yep, like in the dining room or the living room or wherever, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Just another question. It says your work has a lot of different aspects to it. Some looks like installation, some is photography, some almost looks drawing like. What are you focusing on right now creatively? You know.
Hmm. Well, I'll show some of those pictures at the end.
Okay, that's fair. That's good.
So this picture, I think, is one of the ones that kind of shows another one of my obsessions, which is between things that are flat and things that have volume, and sort of playing in that space, that optical space of like whether or not, you know, how something actually is.
Oh yeah.
And so this one is, I think, that idea of communication, right? Trying to get through to the other side.
Hmm.
Um, the moon bowl. So some more pictures. I think I have done a lot of pictures of pictures. This one, I actually made the picture, and I guess when I make these things, I don't like them to be perfect. And actually, I prefer if some tape shows, or if there's not a perfectly clean cut, because I'm not interested in perfection. It's really boring to me as an artist. I just want it to be good enough to hold together for the picture, and then it's done.
Yeah.
So these are
So
provisional.
is this all natural light where you're just shooting in the room?
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you. I started looking at, well, everyone was always telling me about Morandi, and I thought, well, all right, I'll look at Morandi. And so I did, and interestingly, I found that when I actually got to see the show of his work, I didn't really respond to his actual paintings in person as much as I liked really looking at his work on the internet, where I could see like thousands of his pictures in one frame. That really got me excited. But like looking at like one painting, I was like, meh, I don't know. I mean, so I don't know. There is something really fascinating about his work, and one of the things that I really like is that he made everything, right? He made the pictures, he made the cups, he made it all. And so, obviously I'm doing that too, but with paper. And I think one of these shapes in here, the rectangle object, actually comes from a Morandi idea, a Morandi still life.
Oh, really? The black on black is just beautiful there.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my artist friend's idea. She was like, you should do black on black. I was like, ooh. It's nice to have artist friends.
Well, do you find that you surround yourself, like there is a philosophy that, if you surround yourself with artists making good art, your work will rise to that level. And that I always kind of thought about that more when I was in school, when I could surround myself with artists. And then when I was a parent, I don't know if I didn't have that much choice of like who I surrounded myself with. How do you surround yourself with other people who get what you do, or do you feel like you're an island?
I got super lucky in that I have at least one of my very best friends who I fortunately met right after my kid was born, like 2 months after. She's also an artist. And we just so we had each other through the entire experience, which is great because it's true. A lot of the other parents you meet, you're just not that into, and they're not artists and whatever. They don't care about art.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got really lucky. I mean, I just have had some really great friends, and obviously I stay in touch with my other artist friends wherever they're living.
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of creative dialogue is really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a group now. I have like a women's artist group, and we meet like once a month. Right now we're sort of on hiatus because of COVID, but that has been really important, sort of building community outside of school. So this is a more recent piece. This is a comic collection. So the more recent work that I'm doing is more directly dealing with science concepts, and I'm in my work, I work at a science publication that is for scientists. So the stuff I look at is pretty complex, and I get to see a lot of really exciting art from scientists, which they probably don't realize that there are artists looking at their paper being really interested in it for completely opposite reasons than they intended. But I'm there looking at it going, oh, that's so interesting. Look at the way they framed that test or that experiment, and taking little pieces from it. This is, for example, a recreation of an actual scientific diagram, which is, so the pink paper represents the surface of the present. So that's the present. And then the cones are the past light and the future light. And this is so, I mean, what does it actually mean? I'm not exactly sure, like you could probably, but I thought it was really fascinating example of one of these kinds of ideas where, you know, I don't know, anybody can take these ideas and they're out there and they're interesting. So this was one that I did recently. This was before COVID. So the blue glove was not just meant to be like researcher, not like COVID paranoid.
Love that last picture. And it starts to look more, more designy than your work did before, or something like that. Like an awareness of the colors you're bringing into things. And
well, I was experimenting more with colors, trying to bring more color into the work. So this is like a collage thing that I did of these apples that I cut out of the picture. And I'm sort of experimenting with like how to bring collage into the work in different ways. And so this is that hourglass kind of shape again, which I thought was really interesting. And I don't know, I made these like silly wire frames and.
Love this image.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's immediate on your website. So your stuff feels so analog, which is the appeal. And I'm wondering, what is your relationship with, like, I mean, I guess I feel like I have to throw out the question, like, are you cleaning things up? Is there a philosophy that's, no, it needs to be 100% analog, or what, you know, what's your relationship with those kind of more modern things, you know?
Oh, I mean, I just kind of do what works. Like if I have a monofilament line in there holding something, I'll take it out. And I do basic retouching, but I don't move things around, and I don't want to spend any more time on my computer than I have to. So I'm totally not going to be like one of those people who's like doing Photoshop like all day long at my job and then come home and do it in my work. That's
yeah.
So I thought I'd throw in just a couple pictures from my sketchbook, just so you could kind of see like some of the other things I'm working on, and that I do make a ton of drawings, and that the images do go through kind of like a structural, I kind of do this sort of a structural kind of analysis of some of them.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Like if I find a picture or a painting that really moves me and I'm super interested in it, like I was really obsessed with Hilma off Klimt's show, and I would then like, I would do the drawings of the paintings and then try to figure out what was the part of the painting that really, really fascinated me, and what was I like really, you know, what was that piece, and could I make it into a picture? And that's something I think about all the time. So.
These sketchbooks are amazing. So when would these sketches take place? Like on the subway, or like after your kid goes to bed, or like first thing in the morning, or like what's your process?
Well, so sometimes when I can't be shooting, I'll be working in my sketchbook. And so for me, that was a great way to stay connected to my work when I couldn't actually be shooting. So I would be like, okay, well, I can't shoot today, but I'm going to spend, you know, however many hours in my sketchbook thinking about what I'm going to do next, and making drawings and planning it, because there does actually, you know, sometimes I have to buy something, or there are things and then I start shooting and I'm like, oh, I don't have that thing I need. I didn't prepare. So, so it's not just like trying to distill the essential part of an image that I'm interested in. It's also just the planning.
Right. Right. Hey, there's a question here that it might be a good time to ask, and it's just a little confusing, so I'll ask the student. Stanley Phillips, could you ask your question and just say it in words rather than write it out?
Well, it was kind of like along the lines. You kind of answered it with your sketchbook, because I was wondering, like, when you go to do one of your still lifes, do you have the subject matter already ironed out and the composition, or is it like something that is just spontaneous? So I'm going to put this glass of milk here and then pour milk into it, or is is that something you have in your mind before you go to do it, or is it something you do before you actually make the image?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, often I do plan things, but like I said, sometimes more exciting stuff happens on the way that's like more exciting than my idea. And then I just kind of have to let it happen and get out of the way. A lot of times when I make really conscious decisions about my work, like I'm going to do diptychs, or I'm going to do just landscape photography of things or whatever. It never works. I can't let the work, I can't make conscious decisions and have the work follow. Like right now I decided, I want to do work that's more about directly addressing scientific concepts. Yeah, but I also want to do all this other stuff, and I'm going to keep on doing it because I know if I try to do just the one thing, it's not going to work, and it's going to be boring.
It does feel kind of alive in its like homemadeness or something like that. Like it has the feeling of not being over perfected, and it's more like, hey, I just want to do this thing, and then I did it, and then here's the picture of it. Like there is some spontaneity about it or something like that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it to be just good enough to make the picture.
No, that's a good way to phrase it.
So at this point, I think I'm done with I'm finished with the first part. Timothy, do you want me to talk about the book now, to show the book?
Yeah, well, let's pause here a little bit. And my students, do you have any questions you want to bring up now? And we can do it, if anyone has them, let's talk about that now. You don't have to put it in the chat, you can bring it up. You know, and any of Adrian's students as well. Juan Correa, I'm sure you have a question.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious about your process, or kind of fascinated with the pre-planning that you do. I guess my question is, when you were in undergrad, did you have this process of pre-planning and sketching out your projects beforehand?
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't think I developed that until really kind of like maybe during grad school and after grad school. Like keeping a sketchbook has been like really important for me as an artist. I mean, it's made a big difference. I don't think I really had a proper one when I was in grad school. It was sort of something I figured out afterwards.
Oh, interesting.
I probably would have skipped grad school if I'd been doing the sketchbook thing from the beginning.
The Kawal, do you have any questions?
Yes. Can you guys hear me? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, my internet is really bad since morning. So, you know, with your images, I've always noticed that there is a very rich texture in all your subjects, you know, so I just want to know what texture means to you as an artist.
You mean texture, like actual physical texture?
Yes, you know, if you're photographing a paper, you do not edit it completely to make it look very smooth, very nice, but we can see the fine lines in the cloth and the paper. So just the texture in general.
Because it says there's a sensuality to the surfaces, right? That I kind of, you know, like that. I think that's probably why.
Okay.
I don't
nice.
I don't like stuff to be too cold. I don't like really perfect. I mean, I can appreciate really perfect photography, people like Andreas Swirsky and stuff like that, but I don't want to make that kind of work at all.
So you're looking more for the reality factor in your images?
I don't know if it's really reality, but it's something messier than reality. I mean, I feel like more like the kind of the sloppy art of like the early 70s. I really identify with that work, and I love that it was just kind of like, we're just doing this and we're just going to make it, and it's barely going to hold together, and then we're going to make a picture out of it, and then it's going to go away. I mean, I really like that, like the Priscilla Weiss sculptures that they made out of, you know, trash. I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
I love that phrase where you want it to be just good enough to like pass. that's such a refreshing way, especially in this day and age with digital and Photoshop and Lightroom and all these things made to perfect the medium. You know, there is just something refreshing about like bringing it back to the roughness of analog or something, you know. That's interesting. The Tiffany Griffiths, do you have any questions?
Which photograph that you've taken is your favorite? Or do you have a favorite?
I think my favorite is the one I haven't taken yet. I don't know. I mean, my feelings go hot and cold, you know, I change my mind all the time.
Oh, that's a good answer.
What about one that makes you the most proud? Like, it was challenging and you accomplished it, and maybe it turned out different than you had in your mind, but it's something that you're really proud of.
You know, I'm really proud of the Lunar Calendar image, which is a composite image of a whole bunch of images, like 30 different images, because that one required a level of sort of me forcing myself to work out of my comfort zone, which is like figuring out how to make this into something more than some, you know, to make it more than just one piece. It's the sum of parts, right? And it's more powerful that way. And it was a challenge for me to kind of work that way. And I want to do that some more, but I'm not sure how yet. So I'm thinking about those things a lot, like organizational principles and looking at things like the periodic table and different ways of organizing things and thinking about how I can use it or maybe not.
Cool.
That's interesting. That's good.
I actually have another question.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, like your art, if you look at other artists, right, your art is slightly different and slightly more complex to get, right? For the first time viewers, I would say. So when you were entering this market, this art market, did you find any difficulty like presenting your work, or how did it click for you?
You know, it's funny because there's some notes right on this piece of paper that I'm looking at here on the sketchbook where I'm saying some people seem confused about my work. Of my work. If my work was something, what would it look like? Or, you know, and then writing about things like trying. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's a really, if my work had a geography, what would it be? You know, sort of trying to say like, could I map it? Could I, you know, I don't know. I think that's a good question.
But did you ever feel any, when you were approaching the galleries, you know, were they able to, I don't know how to word this.
Yeah, some people were confused by the work, and like some people were like the table image that I have, which is in my book, which is kind of like this levitating table. Some people loved that picture and other people hated it. It was weird. I was like, I don't know why. Like there were certain images like that where people were like, oh, that doesn't work. And other people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I never knew. I realized, you know, ultimately it has to be what I'm interested in, and I can't get too caught up in unless I'm hearing the same thing again and again. Like that doesn't work. I mean, I'm going to definitely pay attention. Obviously, to any negative feedback. I'm ultra sensitive. So obviously listening really carefully to what people are saying and trying to understand, you know, what seems confusing about the work. And I do think that it comes back to this question of like, I have a responsibility as an artist, not just to keep making it and letting it and piling it up. I have to actually organize it and present it and to show it to people in a way that makes sense. And the book is a part of that. And the Lunar Calendar is a part of that. It's like work where I'm really trying to kind of get to that next level as an artist. Like just making interesting pictures, unfortunately, is not really enough.
Okay, yep, this makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, I had a question I wanted to ask you. 2 weeks ago, we had Michael Lewis here, who I think you're familiar with, and he also went to the San Francisco Art Institute. And he brought up this anecdote right away in the beginning of the lecture that was kind of unusual. And what he said was that he had a teacher who said to him, you know, if there are not moments where you look at your work and are like, ooh, this is good, then you may not be doing the right thing, because you're going to be faced with so much adversity and so much confusion and so much all of these things. You kind of need to have a couple wins in your head where you can look at something and be like, oh yeah, I got exactly what I was trying to do here. And do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think I got lost in what you were saying.
I think what he was saying is, if I was to break it down, I think Michael was essentially saying that as artists, we need to almost believe in our work or be our own biggest fan at times, because we will be faced with so much adversity and so much challenge and so much on, just no one caring, that if you aren't really getting that hit from your work as the creator, then
Oh yeah.
you might be missing your target, or you might not be doing the right thing or something like
Yeah.
that.
Oh no, I definitely think that's true. I mean, and I do have moments in the studio where like, like like I'm in the zone and like stuff is like singing to me. And in those moments, those are great. They don't always happen. They don't happen that often, but when it happens, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And yeah, I mean, and I know I've made something good, and it almost doesn't matter the rest of it. It's like, if I can actually get to that point, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of like some inner satisfaction where everyone is their own harshest critic, typically, but if you can transcend that and actually make something that pleases you, then maybe there might be something to follow there, or you might be on the right path, and you got to hang on to those things.
Yeah, it's important to have those instincts.
Yeah. So I am wondering, how did suddenly everything come together where suddenly, you just finished a Kickstarter campaign to fund the book for this project, and then you have a show, and suddenly all these things are coming together. How did how did this snowball to where it is right now?
Well, it was just, so I have a lot of work, so it wasn't hard for me to put together a kind of an impressive portfolio. And then I went to show it at Arl. So that was the thing. I just did did one portfolio review, and then, so I guess from there, I was able to see that people really were responding to the book. I had brought this big portfolio of these giant prints, which was like kind of a nightmare. But I just ended up showing a lot of people the book instead, and people were really responding to it. And I was like, you know what, this is cool. I could just show the book. Like, I don't need to worry about wrestling with these giant prints. Like, who cares? I think the book, people were really into it, and there are plenty of pictures in there for people to look at. It's a lot of stuff. So
yeah, can you tell the students what this event was where you were showing your work?
Okay, so every year the town of Arles in France has a massive photo festival. They've been doing it for many years, and I think last year I was there, was like one of their anniversary years, and they built this new art center, and there are tons of brilliant art shows to see. It's not like, because it's a little town in a province, that like you're not going to see world-class art. You see the most amazing world-class photography. Of course there's like, some schmucky stuff at some of the little shops in town, but for the most part, it's incredible. There are phenomenal shows, and I saw so many different ways of exhibiting photography, and it was so inspiring to see the different ways curators were actually hanging photography using giant billboards to kind of stick them onto the wall, or hanging things from the ceiling, or using heat-sensitive photographs that would, during the process of the day, kind of come out in frames. There was a lot of really inspired curatorial work and photography. It was exciting.
Wow. Nice. What made you decide to go? Like, was it a juried thing where you had to get juried to get into, or what was the process?
Yeah, you apply, you try to sign up. There are various different reviews you can do. Some are better than others. I think the one I picked probably wasn't great. I wouldn't probably do this one again. It was not that well organized. But I think, yeah, you can learn so much, you can do so much and make so many connections at a portfolio review. It's a great thing to do. And I decided that I wanted to do Europe instead of the United States, because I feel like there's a better audience for my work in Europe. And people have always liked my work in France. And so I was like, hey, why not go to France? I have family there, I have friends there, and my work was just published in a magazine there. Like, why not pick France? So going to Europe was a deliberate decision. The photo world in the United States to me is really stinky and small, and I don't love it so much. So I knew I needed a bigger pool for my work. I think there are a lot of people that don't get what I'm doing here. So
that's good. No, that's good. So you got a show out of that, and then the idea of putting together the book to be available when the show opens was the idea. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Wow. And then can we buy the book or do you have to buy it at the show, or what's the like commercial aspect of it?
So a lot of the books, like over half the books, I'm only making 100 copies of it, and so over half of it have been pre-sold already in the Kickstarter process. But I will be selling some. I think the gallery will sell some. And then I always had this idea that I'd be able to sell it like for cheap from my website for like 20 bucks.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That was a total pipe dream,
Right.
because it costs like, I mean, you're not going to make any money obviously from the project no matter what, but like it's sort of a question of, are you going to break even? And that's what you want to do. And I think it's like the books have to go for like, $70 in order to be, which is way more than what I wanted.
Yeah. Now, I remember in talking to you, you talked about how you connected this work with a designer who put together the book, and you were just very impressed with what this designer put together. Can you talk about that project, or that aspect of it, just before we see the book?
Oh yeah, so I had put together this book and I was so proud of myself. I had a narrative, it all made sense. And I was like, I don't really need any changes. I don't even really need a designer. Maybe I could do this myself. Anyways, dumbest idea ever. Like the designer was so good. She designs photo books. That's what she does. Like she's a photography book designer. That's it. And so it was kind of one of the most exciting experiences of my professional life.
Yeah.
To give this what was basically a stack of organized photographs to this woman and have her like slice and dice it into this like just much more interesting creation. And she had some really good ideas, and she really understood my work. She really liked it a lot. She really responded to it, so that really helped. Yeah, it was a really exciting experience.
Oh yeah, the collaboration, working with a great designer, whether it's a little project or something as big as that, you realize how good these people are and how invisible they typically are to the process,
They can make you look so good.
What's that?
They can make you look so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was the designer? Are you comfortable telling the class?
Yeah, Francesca Richet. She designed, I actually own several books that she designed. She designed the New York Times photography book, that big fat one.
Oh, yeah.
And a bunch of others that I have from Aperture. And she's doing a bunch of Powerhouse books right now.
What was the last name? I'll put it in the chat for everybody.
Richet, Richer.
Oh, I've seen that before, for sure.
Yeah, Francesca Richet, like richer.
Yeah, I'm sure I pronounced it richer. Okay, if you guys are good, let's see the book.
All right. Got to move the pictures of everybody so I can see. Okay.
Yeah, and then I will make a little announcement here that Adrian's class, she will let me know when it's time for you guys to head back, and then I'll make that announcement. So just keep that out there.
Okay, so I think you guys have seen the cover image because it's been kind of out there quite a bit. Let me see if I can make this go a little bit more. Just the, no, sorry.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. Okay, there we go. I didn't want to see the sidebar. Okay, so this is the beginning of, these are the first 2 pages of the book.
So I'm wondering, before we get too deep in it and get into the rhythm of it and everything, I always thought like it'd be so hard to figure out what image to put on a cover of a book. And was it a challenge for you with this project, or was it obvious what was going to be the cover, or how did that come about?
Well, I had thought it was going to be that picture that I just showed, which was that tower image.
Yeah.
But then I realized, I mean, I think that the designer proposed this other image, and it made a lot more sense because there was a perfect place to put text. I think I didn't really want to think about text in the book at all, and I don't have any except on the flaps of the book, so there's not any actual text in the body of the book. There's just like a short statement and then a short essay, one on the front, one on the back flap.
Mm-hmm. The cover brought to mind like a universe exploding or something like that, or it felt like space to me. Was that intentional or was that just me?
I'm sorry, I'm just, what was your question, Timothy? I was just concentrating on fixing that.
Oh yeah, this looks good now. The cover reminded me of like being in outer space or something, or like a galaxy, a star exploding or something
Oh
like that.
yeah, definitely, that was intentional, yes. Yeah.
Oh, these are really beautiful. It's very silent. Oh, that's
There's
beautiful.
that paper picture again.
Yeah. Can I ask you about this table picture? Because it comes up so often and it's so intriguing and it's so intentional. You know, it doesn't seem like something you would have just discovered or something like that, but I don't know. Is there anything to say about it, or is it simply like something you discovered?
I guess I did a few different versions of this. I did another one where I had like a candle also sort of set in one of the legs. I think I did like a full day. I kind of like did like a studio residency for myself at my friend's loft, like they were out of town. And so I had the place to myself for the day. So I just kind of like, and they had a lot of space. So it was an opportunity to use like bigger objects. And I think this was, I just pretty much winged it like all day long. Like this was just like something that kind of, I just made on the spot. This was not something I had a sketch for.
Yeah.
But I was thinking a lot about shadows and replacing shadows with different things like liquids or colors. And what I like about this picture is that the scale is confusing, and then also because the, it just looks like it's floating.
It's so mysterious and so unusual, or then I think it looks like some mysterious phenomena, like the mystery spot in Santa Cruz, like water coming out of tables or something like that.
Yeah. So this picture is one of the ones, is a newer picture, and I stuck it in the book not that long ago because I felt like I needed something with a little more color and something a little bit sharper. And this is some of that work that's related to the inspirations of the ideas that I had that came up after seeing the Hilma show, the painting show. And this is just, not actually, there's no actual elements of any of her paintings in here, but it was just the primary colors and trying to think about things, the way things are structured at a basic atomic level, like how what does matter look like? What do these things really look like?
Oh yeah. So is this even photographic, or is it something else?
So this is really simple. It's just a red disc and a blue disc in multiple exposure. So the edge where you see the red and the light blue, those are the true colors. The middle, the purple, is the blending of the two in the camera.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I love the simplicity of that. I love how, again, it feels like outer space or something. It's very bold.
Thank you. So this one is the one that I guess is the one that I'm very proud of. I put this also recently, kind of fairly recently, in the middle of the book because I felt like the book needed like a center that was really strong.
Oh, it feels like Edward Muybridge, you know what I mean? Or something like that.
Yeah. Right, so it's kind of, I call it the Lunar Calendar, and it does have, I think, 24 images in it or something. So I think it's the idea of this kind of progression, but a lunar calendar, an actual lunar phase, is actually really boring because the changes are very incremental. So this is obviously a riff on that. And also a riff on Noguchi. There were some Noguchi shapes that I was specifically thinking about Noguchi and his work, and I read Teaching a Stone to Talk, and I was thinking a lot about forms. And so there's some Noguchi in here.
Wow. A question that came in here is Jean-Claude says, one of the students says, what are some of your go-to sources for finding inspiration?
Anselm Kiefer, the painter, Hilma's work. I look at that stuff all the time. I don't really look at photography for inspiration. As when I'm really like digging and I'm really hungry for something that's like really rich, I'm not going to be looking at photography.
Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful spread here. So let's go back to the one with your son. Was that a connection that the designer made, or was that in your mind when you created any of these images?
This was my arrangement. I mean, some of the pairings are, you know, have stayed the same, you know, and this is one of the ones that stayed the same, obviously, because there's that extension of the gesture.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, when my son was a little bit younger, I mean, sometimes even maybe still, sometimes when he models for me, he's very much, it's like he really gets into the flow of the thing. And I feel like sometimes we would have these great sessions and I'd get really great pictures. And I think this was one of those. And I think my idea for him in the shoot was that he would be like this, like swimmer, you know, kind of in this dream space, swimming.
Oh, huh. I didn't get that at all. But I got something else that was good too.
Cool.
You know, no, that is absolutely beautiful. So can you talk about your use of him? Because he appears in this, I think a couple of times, but then it doesn't ever feel like it's about him or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I think he's important. I think it is important to have a person in here. I think it gets a little too ethereal without people. And I like bringing things back to the body. I like the body as a reference point. You know, some people would tell me when I showed the work, they'd be like, well, the pictures of the people, you know, this doesn't make any sense to have the pictures of people in here. And I was like, I disagree. I think it does make sense. And I have a really good reason for why I want to do that. So I'm going to ignore your advice.
Oh yeah, no, got to do that for sure. I think it makes it more human and more about a life rather than an academic structure or something like that, you know? Yeah, no, I like seeing these signs of humanity. So this picture on the left, there's like it seems like it appears in different forms in the various things like we've looked at, like this idea of slicing a sheet of paper.
Oh, that one. Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, using the wrong tool for the job, or it was kind of like I don't know, like I guess the idea, the book can be thought of as a series of repetitions of different types of actions, like cutting, slicing, tearing, you know, all these different movements. And that's, I think, one of them was a cutting movement.
Mm-hmm. The sharp line in these pictures that look so kind of soft and gentle, or the sharp edge of the knife in these pictures that are kind of seem soft and gentle, always seems to stick in my brain a little bit. Yeah, these are beautiful. Oh, wow.
And that's it.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so nice. That is really beautiful. I am so happy for you. I think that book is kick-ass. You talk about things that the designer did, but from a view, like just someone who's viewing the stuff, to me, it's all about your photos. You know what I mean? There's no designing games played, or they're very invisible and we don't see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she made decisions about what, you know, how to frame the pictures. Sometimes they go full bleed, sometimes they don't. You know, I mean, there were a lot of things that she did. Also, she sort of helped me kind of rethink some of the ways that I'd organized the pictures, and you know, she put together the book cover too, which is, you know, has the copy, the text on it and stuff. It looks nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, this was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Let's see if we have any other questions here from everyone, and then we can let you go. I know it's late there as well.
Can I stop sharing so I can see everybody, or?
Say that again. Oh yeah, let's turn on your cameras, everyone. You know, let's open this up to questions. Rochelle, do you have any questions? Oh, we gotta hear you.
First of all, I just want to let you know, what you're saying resonates with me as my daughters. I have teenage daughters now, and as they're getting older, and I can kind of explore creatively, go more further, which opens up things. Do you find that you're more scientifically driven? I mean, I can see it right in your work, just how strong graphically, and also the balance that you have between these like really complex shapes and lines and relationships with things, but also the very like you know, you're seeing the paper bends, you're seeing, you know, the hole cuts with the fingers. Where do you find the balance in that? Because it's like extremely complex paired with really simple, which is really, really beautiful, by the way. So yeah, how did you just kind of find the place where you're like, you know what, screw it, this is my voice that I'm going to use, and you kind of have developed your own style with just these really complex scientific notions, and how you find, you know, just getting the satisfaction with just doing that kind of speaks to who you are. And by the way, I love the inclusion of your son in the project too, just as a mom myself.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for your compliments. It's really nice to hear that. I think that, I don't know, I think sometimes I am really drawn to complex images, like images that are very structured and complex, and I will look at them and analyze them and try to figure out how they're put together. Like I have this book of alchemical images, that are like, you know, ancient from the 1600s or earlier that I've been looking at lately. And also, yeah, the Hilma stuff I keep coming back to, because I make sometimes images that are very structured, and then I sometimes don't know what to do with them. Like, I don't know what I did. I made that thing. It's kind of cool, but it's not really done. And I'll just kind of keep it, and I'll look at it in my notebook, and I'll think, well, maybe it's an element. Maybe it needs to be part of a collage, or maybe I don't know. But like, I think I'm going somewhere. I think I'm trying. I mean, I don't know. It may not be for years that I may actually be able to make that picture that I'm formulating in my mind. But I just sort of have learned that my process takes a long time, and I have to just like, I'm not going to, if it didn't work, I'm not going to throw it away. You know, if it's still something I'm really interested in, I'm just going to, you know, kind of keep digging at it.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. You know, the one thing I wanted to ask you that kind of goes off of Rachel's question is, like, you know, the way you made a living had nothing to do with your art. You know, your art was its own thing. And you never had to like cater it to the marketplace or do something that would sell or do something that could maybe speak to editorial or speak to commercial. There was none of that. You just did what you wanted to do. And I'm kind of shining a light on that, because I think a lot of the students are bringing up the utter independent of vision of these images and how utterly they create their own world. And I think a lot of that probably also has to do with the fact that you were really just doing them as pure art. There was no need to exploit them as a way to make a living or something like that. Would you say that's accurate?
I mean, I think that was probably a gift to me. I think it would have really messed with my head, especially when I was like younger, like to having a gallerist or some curator or someone influential in the art world trying to tell me or suggest what I should be doing probably would really mess with my head.
Yeah.
So maybe it's better that I was able just to do what I wanted to do.
I think working, you know, working invisibly and, you know, I mean, I think here at the school, we're always trying to discuss what do you do after school and how do you make a living? And then, you know, and I think I do like the idea here when we had Michael Lewis here, his path was, you know, he described himself as most likely to sell out when he was at the San Francisco Art Institute. And he said that joyfully and with a sense of humor and acceptance though to it. And I think with him, his work does have that feeling, his self-portrait work, it's connected to his commercial work, you know. And yeah, your thing is so, you know, the path you took, it really allowed that your personal work to truly just be that. And I think what we're seeing is that this is what happens when you do that, you know, it's unique.
When I'm looking to hire a photographer and I'm on the fence and I'm like not 100% sure about their work, the first place I look is their personal work. I always go there first because I'm like, this is going to tell me something really important, you know, which is what are these people really interested in and how would they handle this assignment? You know, like it really does give me insight into their impulses, and that's really important because often I can't tell when I'm looking at like, you know, a bunch of corporate portraits or whatever. It's like, how do you really get a feel for what really drives them, and if maybe you have an unusual assignment and you need somebody who's going to handle it in a certain way. Right. So I'm always looking there for insights as to sort of how they will handle the work.
Yeah, and we are in the day and age where like every photographer is good and every portfolio is great, kind of. And I think trying to find the what's unique within that is tricky. I don't know if you agree with that, but I tend to feel like everything is like great these days, you know. Let's hear from the students again. Let's see, Morgan Ferguson, did you have any questions?
No, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. No, I think you've basically answered all my questions throughout the thing. Yeah, I really do love your work, though. It's really, like everyone said, it does have that analog kind of style to it, and it really does draw your eye into it. And the simplicity, yet like I'm always looking for meanings into things. And I love how like with everything, there's like something deeper within it. And that just like intrigues me so much, and I love it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Great.
Well, thank you. That's really kind.
Thank you for speaking to us.
Somebody's going to ask a really difficult question?
I'm on a blank, so.
That's okay.
I had a question in the chat pod.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I definitely get the vibe of 70s performance art, but in a super contemporary way. And I was curious of that lineage, like who in that lineage do you resonate with, and who have you studied, and do you feel that? Who are your people in that era that you've looked to?
Well, all the women. I mean,
Yeah.
Rebecca Horne, the sculptor, the German sculptor.
Oh yeah. Yes, I was thinking her. I didn't want to put it out there, but I was like, I wonder if.
Oh my God, yes, I love that stuff. Are you kidding? And I also, what's even better about that work is the really shitty documentation that they did of that work. Like I just love how bad they were at like doing it, because I don't know, there's just something. Just the idea is more powerful, right? It is really about the idea, you know, and doing it. And the documentation is the secondary, and you do get the idea. I guess there are a whole bunch of others I'm not remembering, but yeah, I love that. I love that work. Thanks for making that connection. Nice.
Yeah, good connection for sure.
Yeah.
The Fiona, I know you had some questions. No, you do not? They were answered? Okay. Lori Boginski, do you have anything?
I found it so inspiring, and your work really resonated. I loved your book. I agree with Morgan. I really loved the deeper meaning behind all your images. And I am just starting to venture into fine art, and the beauty and the simplicity in the images, yet they're so profound, is something I aspire to do. So I found it very inspiring to hear you today. Thank you.
Thanks.
That was good. Let's see. Okay, Adrian's 488 class. Please meet back in our class at 5:05, and it's 4:57 now. So get in your last minute questions. Jacob calling from far away. You got any questions?
No.
No? After all that?
I'm good, yeah.
Let's see. My class, it's mandatory. I guess everybody asked a question. Is that true? Some people asked too. Lori Boringer, I always see you at these things. Do you have any questions?
Actually, I do. So when you are sequencing your photos for like an exhibition, or obviously you addressed the book, you had the designer, which was really kind of an interesting thought. But how do you think about the sequencing of your photos for, say, an exhibition or anything?
Well, I actually was really tortured by that question recently, but fortunately for me, the gallery did it. They decided what they wanted. And then I was in the curious situation of just being like, oh, they want that picture at like 10 by 8 feet. That's not going to work. But it was an interesting, it was a good experience. I mean, I was relieved that they picked it, because I was sort of trying to figure it out. But I don't think that's my strong suit, you know, like figuring out those. So I was hugely relieved when they came up with a collection of images that they wanted, and just asked for them.
Oh, it was decided by them. Hey, walk us through the show, you know, like how it's interesting, you know, what exists as a book is different than what exists as a show. Are the pictures giant? Are they small? What's the presentation?
It's going to be 3 different sizes, and the Lunar Calendar is going to be literally a sticker on the wall that's going to be like 5 by 7 feet or something. It's going to be massive. I literally had that printed at this like industrial printer where they're doing like they're printing the big stickers for like where to stand and like, you know, where to get your hand sanitizer. Like they have these big 36-foot long printers and stuff. It's kind of amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's going to be a whopper. And that one, fortunately, is going to look great at that size because those files are all huge and there's 24 of them. So, and then other images are going to be smaller, and then some are going to be kind of in between, like 2024, and quite a few are going to be like mural size, like 30-40.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I did have part of one of the problems, I guess, that I'm having is I've realized that when I first started doing digital photography, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I barely know what I'm doing now. And so I would shoot the pictures and like, I'd be like, oh my God, this is totally underexposed. I can fix it later. Well, you kind of can't. Like you're going to get weird banding and modeling and stuff. So I'm sort of discovering that now. It's like, oh, this picture at like, you know, 30 by 40 inches, it's like a whole other. So actually bringing the work to life in print is a little tricky, I guess, if you've just been in the digital realm for so many years and you don't really have to finalize.
Wow, I love that moon thing being so big. And those, I've seen shows with the stickers and they're great. The reproduction's great. You know what I mean? It's just like it's in the room with you. It's such a neat experience. Whose idea was that?
The gallery.
Oh,
and
that's
there's
great.
a lot in France. I saw a lot of shows where they had like mural size, like pictures just stuck right on the wall. So there's no frame. Like it just goes whoop right on the wall.
Yeah.
And so it kind of solves all those problems that you have about like, well, how to frame this picture and this and that. But, you know, I mean, sometimes it works better than others, but it's really an interesting, you know, obviously it's not a fine art thing. It's borrowed from, you know, commerce.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you see it at museums and everything now, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've had like pop-up shows with my rep for commercial things, and they've done the stickers on the wall, and it's just like, no, it's good. You can't buy that sticker.
Oh, you can't buy it. Do you sell them through the gallery, like as an addition, as a sticker, or do you sell a print?
I don't know what they're going to do about the lunar calendar. That is a good question. I have no idea. I mean, it's going to be one time. The show's going to be up for 3 months. So I guess at the end of 3 months, they'll peel it off the wall, throw it away, and repaint. So.
It is like a little thing. It's when you take it down, it's destroyed, in my experience.
Yeah. Okay, totally. Yeah.
So, yeah, plus you'd need a room that big to, you know what I mean, to put it up and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question from Lori Foringer. What is the name of the show that the book is associated with?
The show, the gallery titled it Buried Intentions.
Oh, that's right. It's different.
It's different work. It's not the same pictures.
Oh, it's not?
No, there are a few overlaps, but not many.
Oh, you got like 2 things happening at the same time? That's pretty good. Oh, wow. What did we see? Okay, so the book is different, and Buried Intentions is its own curated show.
Yeah, I mean, the book has a lot of iteration, has pictures that I don't feel are strong enough to really be on their own. They're meant to be in a group, and they talk to each other, and I literally shot them to go together. Like in some cases, I'd be like, all right, there's a hole in the book. I need to put this piece in there. So I would then go shoot that piece. They're very iterative of each other. They're not, a lot of those pictures are just not meant to be seen in a gallery kind of setting. They're really meant to be in the book.
Now that's an interesting point. Yeah, these things are different, and they live differently, and they say different things. And no, that's great. I think we're good here. We will let you go. And I know it's late there. This was great. This was totally great. And I'm so excited for your show. I wish I could see it.
Thank you. If anybody wants to reach out later, you can reach me through my website.